Ready?
Yeah.
And the judge timer.
Yes.
Then let's begin. In 2011, my maternal grandmother had developed dementia. This meant she would start to remember less and less about herself. It began with the small things like, where did I park my car? What did I eat for breakfast today? But eventually one night, my grandmother woke up in a state of panic. My mother rushed into the room, but Grandma couldn't recognize her, the woman she'd given birth to. But even more shocking, she couldn't remember herself. According to MayoClinic.org, quote, dementia isn't a specific disease, but instead describes a group of symptoms affecting memory, thinking, and social abilities severely enough to interfere with daily functioning, end quote. There are many types of dementia. Alzheimer's, which is the most common type, accounts for 60% of all dementias. Other types include vascular, Lewy body, Huntington's, Parkinson's, and frontotemporal lobe dementia. According to medicalnewstoday.com, currently 8 million Americans are experiencing dementia. And due to the aging of the baby boom generation, this number is expected to grow to 25 million by the year 2050. The annual cost of caring for these patients will be $700 billion. But let us not forget another big factor, the emotional toll that dementia can have on patients and their family members. And for Christians, dementia often raises deep spiritual questions about who we are when we have forgotten ourselves. In this speech, I will be taking you into the background of the process of Alzheimer's dementia. Secondly, I'll give you practical ways to help patients and their caregivers. And lastly, I'll tie in the spiritual aspects and implications. My purpose in sharing with you today is to give you hope. Not necessarily hope that depends on finding a cure, but hope that depends on remembering God. I'd like to begin with a brief tutorial on dementia using facts from The Forgetting by David Shank. The brain is the size of 2 adult fists, weighs approximately 3 pounds, and consists of 100 billion nerve cells linked in 100 trillion separate pathways. When a child is born, you can compare these pathways to a house that is wired for electricity and phone, but none of these wires are yet insulated. As a child grows and matures, various areas of the brain become insulated with a myelin sheath and are brought online. The last area to be brought online is the hippocampus, which has the most to do with making memories. This is why children generally don't have many memories before the age of 3. But with Alzheimer's, these electronic pathways become blocked with plaques and tangles. One spot of plaque or tangle neuron leads to another, like a pileup of cars after a traffic accident, and the working systems of the brain begin to unravel. Interestingly, in almost the reverse order of how the systems were brought online. The hippocampus, which is located on the temporal lobe at the sides of your head near your ears, is the first area to be affected. Long-term memories still exist, but the ability to make new ones, like where you put your keys or what you talked about 5 minutes ago, can be compromised. From there, they spread to the amygdala, which is located in the middle of the brain, which affects fear and anger. From there, they spread to the rest of the temporal lobe, which affects memory, to the parietal lobe on the top of your head, which affects touch, pain, and spatial awareness. The last area to be affected is the frontal lobe, which has the most to do with retrieving your memories. This is why, and also acts as a filter, keeping us from doing and saying whatever comes to our mind. Dementia can only be definitively diagnosed with a brain biopsy, but an MRI can show a shrinking hippocampus. It's usually diagnosed by a series of simple memory tests, the most common being the clock test, where a patient is asked to draw a clock face and hands to indicate certain times. A simple test like this can actually identify 9 out of 10 cases of dementia. Approximately 5% of Alzheimer's is caused by a defect in a single gene. The rest of dementias are caused by multiple factors, and the process is still not fully understood. The most common risk factor is age. If you live long enough, you have a high probability of developing dementia of some kind. Scientists are working very hard to find a cure, but currently no such thing exists. But what can we do to help? How can we give practical assistance? This leads me to my second point. what we can do to help. The most important thing we can do when dealing with dementia is understanding what's going on with the people that have it. It's way more complex than simple memory loss. A person with dementia slowly loses their peripheral vision until they can only see what's straight ahead of them. Next, depth perception is lost, and it makes it impossible for them to distinguish between a picture and real life. And according to Alzheimer's.net, the sense of smell is one of the first symptoms of cognitive decline, making foods that are once loved be rejected. By understanding what's going on with dementia patients, caregivers and family members can be more graceful in their approach. Another important tool is learning how to talk to dementia patients. Many people have a fear of talking to them because they may be a loved one and it's tough to see what they're going through. A common mistake that is made is asking questions that start with, "Do you remember?" This can make conversations seem like quizzes and causes major stress and concern for the patient. Instead, you can ask them to tell you about something from their early life, such as their wedding or their first job. The earlier the memory was made, the easier it will be for them to access it. And although the elderly deserve to be treated with respect, young children and people living with dementia have much in common. Tom and Karen Brenner, authors of You Say Goodbye and We Say Hello, the Montessori Method for Positive Dementia Care, say, quote, "The lives of children and the lives of people living with dementia intersect at the crossroads of wonder. People with dementia have lost a lot, but they still have their curiosity, their ability to feel wonder," end quote. Dementia patients enjoy typical children's activities, such as singing, dancing, arts and crafts, and having picture books read to them. It's a good idea to have a plan when visiting. Bring a book to a reader, even a jar of Play-Doh. It's the small things like this that can make a dementia patient's day that much better. And you can also help them rehearse their faith by reading scripture passages and singing hymns. And multi-sensory experiences, such as the sacrament of communion that the Lord set apart for us to remember Him, greatly aid in memory. But let us not forget about helping the caregivers. Dr. Benjamin Mass says, quote, "At some point, all caregivers will admit that they feel absolutely alone, as if no one understands what they're going through," end quote. Caregivers can use help with practical things, such as house cleaning, meals, and respite care, but they also need personal visits and conversation. They need prayer and encouragement. But is there anything encouraging we can say to those dealing with neurological decline? This leads me to my third and final point, the spiritual implications of dementia. Who are we when we have forgotten ourselves? We are the children of God, made in His image. We are His most precious creation. Although we may think we are losing significance, God is holding on to us. Dr. Benjamin Mass says, quote, "Even when we have nothing left to offer others, we still have value to God, and nothing can change that," end quote. When we cannot walk, God carries us, but more importantly, when we cannot remember, God remembers for us. Isaiah 49:15 says, quote, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion over the child she has born? Though she may forget, I will not forget you," end quote. In conclusion, according to a poll made by the Marist Institute in 2011, dementia is the most feared diagnosis, even topping cancer. Most cancers can be treated or, in some cases, cured, but there's no curing or delaying the process of dementia. But we shouldn't give in to fear, but instead trust that God has a perfect plan for each and every one of us, because nothing, not even dementia, can separate us from Him. Romans 8:38 says, quote, "For I am convinced that nothing can separate us from the love of God, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, nor our fears for today, nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love," end quote. That night when my grandmother woke up in a state of panic and was literally asking, "Who am I?" my mother didn't know what to say. Finally, in desperation, she asked, "Do you know who Jesus is?" And my grandmother said, "Yes, I do know Him," and began to pray, "Lord, help me." The song "Who Am I" by Casting Crowns says, quote, I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow, a wave tossed on the ocean, a vapor in the wind. But still, you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling. And you told me who I am. I am yours. Thank you.